Guess who's back? Let's roll that intro. All right, guys, welcome back to the channel. So this is what I have set up right now because I can't be around cars for my current mobilization. So I set this up real quick just so I can continue to develop content, keep you guys informed on what's happening with my projects, and we can kind of continue to develop the channel with content that maybe doesn't involve me actually getting pissed off and throwing wrenches at things. So I was contacted by a buddy about a project that he just bought, about a 1969 Mustang Coupe. Nothing special about it. It had a 351 swapped into it and a 4-speed automatic transmission that's at some point got swapped in from something in the 80s. So the very first thing he tells me is, I want to go fast. And I had, hey, hold on for a minute. And I kind of had to bring him back and talk to him about a few things about, hey, this is your first project. Let's talk about maybe some tips and some tricks that I've learned on all of my projects to maybe make your build be a bit more successful. And I thought, you know what? This is a great opportunity for me to put it to a content, because I know other people are constantly buying cars, or they're buying maybe their first car when it comes down to a project, and they may want to go fast, but they maybe don't fully understand what fast means. I don't even know what fast means, and I'm well into the rabbit hole, and I just want to kind of bring you guys to where I'm at to kind of give that little reality check and to maybe save you guys a lot of money. So the very first thing I'm going to say is you have to establish the end goal. Is fast? How fast is fast? Are you trying to set a 200 mile an hour, record on a track somewhere, or is fast maybe doing a time attack on an autocross event? These are very different types of cars that have to be built, and they both require very specific types of parts that are very different from the other. So establishing your goal, number one, and being very specific with that goal. And I want to be able to do a 10-second quarter mile. Perfect. That gives you what kind of event it's going to be and the time. Okay, then you got to find your project. Much harder. And a lot more kind of dives into this, where I have some notes to the side, so I'm going to have to refer to them here. But number one, what is it that you're looking for when it comes down to if it's a catalog car or not? The definition of what I've always kind of framed a catalog car to be is, what was the production numbers? What's the current following of it? Are there reproduction parts available for it? And is there aftermarket parts available for it? So those 4 big factors, in my mind, implement what is considered a catalog car. If you're buying a car that doesn't have a lot of following to it, it may be dirt cheap, but you're not going to be able to get it maybe to that goal if it's you wanting to run a 10 in it, because it requires safety aspects that aren't being made, or parts to be fixed that aren't possible yet. So you're going to either have to pay someone to do fabrication or go on and do it yourself. So realistically, when you're picking your car, or the range of which your cars are, being realistic with what you can and can't do with that is pretty important. I am not going to try to set a land speed record in a Nash Metropolitan. Not going to happen. So even though it may be $2,000, not going to try that. That's not realistic. So having that realistic car in mind off of what you're wanting to do with it, I would say, is essentially number 2, right? Picking the right car. And also understand that Number 2 will also roll into number 3. So 3 is picking your price budget. So I will say in my 1970 Charger, I didn't have a very good goal in it. All I said, I knew I wanted to get a Charger and I wanted to have a big blower sticking out of the hood. That was literally it. What I didn't take in consideration is things like cooling and safety and brakes and what that cost actually is. See, there's certain brands that, like Corvette is a perfect one, where the moment it says Corvette on it, the price goes up. The moment it says Dodge or Plymouth on it, for some reason, the price goes up. And it's amazing. AMD metal is a perfect example of this. And yes, there are more expensive parts of other cars, but a quarter panel for a mid-run 70s Camaro versus a 68, 69, or specifically maybe a 70 Charger, parts are either not made or they're ridiculously expensive because they don't sell as many, and in turn, because the production numbers are so low, they have to make more money on each one to make it worth their time to make the part. So I understand it. It just sucks when I have to buy a part for something and I know that, well, I'm going to be paying 10, 20, 30, sometimes 50 or 60% more than you will if you have a Chevy Camaro. It's just how it is. So understanding that the price budget will also be very fluid based upon what vehicle you buy. If you buy a Plymouth Fury or a Pontiac Executive or an AMC anything or a Studebaker anything, understand that there's not parts for those. Or if there are, they're not plentiful. And in turn, you're going to be paying more to get the same part you could on that more traditional catalog car. So your price has to be adjusted for that. I can say that I'm a little over 70 grand into my Charger project, and it's not moving on its own yet. I mean, I guess it technically could, but we're not, and we're not to that point. Yet 70 grand would be able to buy one hell of a nice Camaro that's already running and driving, that's already pre-made and good to go. So having that mentality is whether or not how unique you want to be, if you want that one specific car and that goal, all contribute to your price point. What I would recommend is when you're setting your price budget, you also have to include things like tools you're needing to do. I really need to replace the floors on this, but I don't have a welder. That should go into your cost. Now, granted, you can use that welder on many things moving forward, but it's still a cost, and it still needs to be contributed to the overall cost of that build, or at least factored into the budget. Another thing is, if you can't do the work, how much are you going to pay someone to do that work? What's the going shop rate? Do you have one shop in mind, or do you have to take it to multiple places? And then trying to compile all that together. And then putting all of those plans to paper. The hardest part that I've learned is that being realistic with your plan to paper. I've learned that I've shortchanged myself multiple times and said, hey, this project is only going to, this radiator, I can buy a Champion radiator and it's going to be $300. And then I budget for that. And then right before it becomes time for me to buy it, I start doing more research, which I should have done prior. And I go, oh, you know what? It's not going to work. There's people having cooling issues or whatever it is. And in turn, I end up having to buy a custom radiator like I did on my Charger. So while I'm opening this, I ended up going with a 3-core radiator with 1-inch cores. This already is going to be really close, and I pray it's going to fit. But every day, this is what I'm working with. All right, now this radiator has set me back quite a bit. That custom radiator was $800 some. I mean, that's $500 more than what I was expecting. And that $500 has to come from something. Or I have to figure out how to save up an additional $500. So that's just one piece of an entire car, and that's how it works. So being realistic with your price and what your expectations are, doing the research before you pull the trigger on one of those cars. Otherwise, just know you're going to be like me and probably still working on a car 5-6 years later, trying to figure out how to get it to actually go. So bottom line up front, that's what I'm going to recommend. That's kind of how you have to look at it. I'll probably dive into cars that I would probably, if I had to buy another one in the future, I'd probably do something like that. I'm probably going to talk about roll cages in the future. I'm still doing a bunch of research on that. I'm having a roll cage put in on my car, on the Charger, and I want to make sure that I'm doing it to spec and a bunch of other issues. It's just a whole bunch of things that I have ideas for videos, is being able to apply it, to being able to reach out to you. And if you guys have something specific you guys want to see, comment below. Just tell me. And I'll do some research on it. I'm going to try to dig into this because I want to learn too, because I need to continue to progress. I want to get smarter about the builds that I'm doing in the future. So as always, like, subscribe, comment if you want more. And yeah, good luck on your first project. I'm sure you're going to do great. Keep building.